Hello all. So now that we have covered the basics of entities in Flecs, we can now safely move on to the next big part about Flecs, components. Now, if you come from Unity, you may know that components can be scripts that you can create and run on something in your world. However, all a component is in reality is a small piece of data that is tied to an entity. Let me show you. Let's say we wanted to create an entity, and let's say the entity was a goblin. What pieces of information would be useful to have on a goblin? Well, immediately I would put on a position and maybe some stats on it. Let's say the stats are health, damage, amount of gold, and clan name. Also, from here on, I will be typing in my own project in real time so I can explain everything as I go. Alright, now that we're in the IDE, let's first make our components. So all we're going to do to make the components is it's just going to be a regular struct. So all you're going to have to do is type typedef, struct, and then let's do position first. So we're just going to type position, and then put in some curly brackets and put position at the end with the semicolon. And now we just put in the fields that we would associate with position. So for example, float x, and let's also do float y. Now we're also going to need another component, and in this case let's make it the Goblin Stats. So again, we're just going to type typedef, struct, and then this time let's do Goblin Stats. Now on this one I decided on let's do an integer for, say, health, an integer for damage, let's do an integer for the amount of gold, and finally for the clan name let's make it a string. So to make strings in C, all you're going to write is character, or CHAR, star, and clan name. And that's it. Alright, let's go goblin mode. So to make our goblins, first we're going to have to make a world. So type ECS, world, T, and then we're just going to call it star, and then world. The star is important, equals ECS init. And there we go, we've made our world. And so now let's put some goblins in it. So we're just going to do ECS, entity, T. Now for the name of our goblin, I just tried to find some of the easiest names to pronounce online, so I came across Tilks, and we're going to set him equal to a new entity. We have to pass in the world, and that creates it. And now let's make one more. Let's name her Kang. That's another one that the only one I could pronounce. And now let's just start attaching components to them. Alright, in order to use our components though, we have to actually declare them. So to do that, go to the top and go just under world, and then in all caps type ECS underscore component, and then pass in the world. And the ID is just going to be the component we want to declare. So let's do position first. And then we'll just make one more for our Goblin Stats. Alright, and now let's actually add them to each of our entities. So first let's do Tilks. So simply all we're going to do is type ECS add, and then we're just going to add the component. So we're going to specify the world, the entity, so let's do Tilks first, and then finally position. And so that adds the position component to one of our entities. And we can do the same with King now. So if I just copy this line, go over to the entity, and then just type in King instead. And now we've added the position component to King. Now let's add the Goblin Stats to each. So I'm just going to copy both of these lines, and then just paste them down here. And I'm just going to turn position into Goblin Stats for both of them. Okay, so now that we've actually added the components to each of our entities, now let's actually set them. So in order to do that, let's first set Tilks' position. So we're just going to write ECS set, and then specify the world, the entity, the component we want to set, so in this case we're going to do position, and now we're just going to supply the arguments. So all we're going to do is just put in some curly brackets, And I usually like to put a little space in between, but you don't have to. And then we're just going to do our x, comma, our y. So this will look like this. So let's put him at 10 on the x and 2 on the y. And that sets his position to 10, 2. Now let's do the same with king. Maybe they're in the same clan, so maybe they stay next to one another. Let's put her 2 spaces to the right. Okay, now let's actually set the goblin stats of each of them. The process is exactly the same. So let's do ECS, set, and then let's do tilks again. And this time, instead of position, we're going to put in goblin stats. And in the curly brackets, this time I'm going to click enter, and I can now actually specify each of these by name, if I really wanted to. So all you have to do is type dot, and then let's do health. And let's set health equal to, let's say 10. And then for all the other ones, let's do damage. Let's set it to 5. By the way, the order doesn't actually matter. I can set damage first and then health last. Now let's do amount of gold. Maybe he's not very rich. Let's say he has 5 gold. And now the clan name. The clan name is a string, which means that we just type clan name, like the rest of them. And then equals, and then double quotes, and I'm not going to come up with any strange or unique names for this, so let's just say clan1 for simplicity's sake. Okay, now let's do the same thing for tilks. So I'm just going to grab all of this code here, and I'm going to go down here and paste it right there for king, and of course we have to actually replace tilks with king. And now let's set her goblin stats. Maybe she's not as strong, but maybe she's a little bit more rich. Let's say she has 30 gold instead, and is also part of the same clan. Now, if you want to just update one value in it, then this is how we might do it. So let's say that king betrayed tilks and changed clans. In order to do this, we have to do ECS, get, mutable, and then we have to supply the world, the entity, and the component. So in this case, it is going to be Goblin Stats. In order to change one of the fields inside of Goblin Stats, just put hyphen, and then the greater than symbol to make it look like an arrow, and then you can see all the fields here already. And so let's change the clan name, and now set it equal to, let's say, clan2 for simplicity's sake. And maybe Tilks is not a huge fan of that, so maybe he moves away just a little bit from King, because he's not a huge fan of her anymore after her betrayal. So let's set Tilks's position, and let's set his X position to be 2. So you might be wondering why I used ECS get mutable and then set one variable through that. And that's because if we did it like this with ECS set, I'm just going to copy this and then paste it down here. If I tried to set, say, health to 10, and then we got rid of all of this stuff just because we want to set health to a different number, well then that would set everything else to its default value. So the damage would become 0, amount of gold would also become 0, and clan name would become null. And so we don't want that, we only want to set just one of these. So if we want to set health, then we have to actually say set the health to 10, just like that. So if we actually want to set a couple of different values, maybe we want to say we want to change health and damage. Well, then let's do it like this. Instead of including the arrow on the end, let's actually say Goblin Stats, so let's say King Stats, equals this. Oh, and this is going to be a pointer. Okay, so if these are now King Stats, and so now if we want to change any of King Stats, all we have to do is say King Stats, and then use that arrow again, and then we can set any of these. So we can set health to 10, the amount of gold to 35. And what's good about this is it does not affect any of these other values. they will remain the same. That was a lot more code today than usual, but that's the bulk of components. We will look at them again in the future when we want to run some code on them, but all they really are is information that's attached to an entity, and that's it. If you haven't noticed, I also got a new component for my computer. Thanks for the mic, Dad. And again, go to the Flecs community or my server if you need further help. This video is long enough already though, so I'll cut it here. Good night.